Jack stood at the edge of the alien market, holding a single dusty bottle in his hand. It was whiskey, real earth whiskey, aged and rare. The last thing he had left to trade. His ship was gone, his cargo stolen by pirates, and his credits had run dry 2 planets ago. Now he was tired, hungry, and alone on a planet whose name he couldn't even pronounce. But Jack wasn't the kind of man to give up easily. The alien bazaar buzzed with strange voices, blinking lights, and scents that made his eyes water. Creatures of all shapes and sizes moved past him, but none gave him a second look. They saw only a human trader, one without a booth, without goods, only a bottle clutched in one hand. He called out a few offers. 1 bottle of pure earth whiskey, never opened. No one cared. Until she arrived. She came from the shadows. Tall and graceful, her skin glowing like silver under the suns. Her eyes were bright gold, her movements elegant and slow. She was an alien, clearly a noble one, dressed in flowing silks that shimmered with stars, and she was staring at the bottle, Valrea. The alien stepmother of high status walked up to Jack and stopped only inches away. She leaned forward, closed her eyes, and took in the scent of the whiskey. A soft gasp left her lips. "I haven't smelled that in 3 centuries, she whispered, her voice smooth and deep. The bazaar grew quiet, as if everyone was waiting for what would happen. Next, Jack raised an eyebrow, interested. Valrea opened her eyes slowly and nodded. Very? She offered him rare crystals from her pouch, glowing like liquid fire. She offered him 5,000 credits on a gold chip. Jack shook his head. "I don't want money. I need food and shelter, just for one night." People around them gasped, shocked that he refused such a rich offer. But Valrea didn't get angry. She smiled. And it was not a kind smile. Was curious, amused. "Come to my house, human," she said softly. "Drink with me tonight. And you will have both." Jack hesitated, unsure of her game, but he had no better option. So he followed her through the glowing streets and into a grand carriage drawn by alien beasts. He didn't notice right away, but 3 girls were watching him from a high balcony as they passed. They said nothing, but their eyes followed him. 3 daughters, each more beautiful than the last. Valrea's estate was large, surrounded by floating lamps and singing plants. She led Jack inside, offered him warm food and clean clothes. They sat at a glass table under a ceiling of shifting stars. She poured the whiskey carefully, like it was holy water. They drank, slowly, silently, watching each other. Then she asked, "Do you know what this means to my people?" Jack shook his head. No idea. She smiled again, that same mysterious smile. "It is called spirit water by our elders. A drink for bonding, for truth, for change." Jack laughed lightly. "To me, it's just whiskey." But Valrea leaned closer, her eyes glowing. "Not here," as they spoke. Her daughters appeared one by one, entering the room in silence. Kala, the eldest, tall and strong, with warrior eyes. Line, the second, wild-haired and curious, with quick steps. And Nyxia, the youngest, quiet and veiled, her presence soft like moonlight. They stood by the door, watching the human who shared the spirit water with their mother. Valrea introduced them only with a nod, no words. The daughters said nothing, but their eyes spoke loudly. Something in the air changed, like a door had opened that night. Jack lay in a soft bed inside the estate, still unsure of what he had stepped into. He had sold only a bottle of whiskey, but gained more than shelter and food. He had been invited into something deeper, something ancient. From his window, he saw Kala standing in the garden, staring up at the stars. Line climbed a tree, laughing quietly to herself, and Nyxia stood in the shadows, looking directly at his room. They were watching him, all 3, but not with fear or dislike. Jack felt a strange pull in his chest, like the start of a story he didn't yet understand. And downstairs, Valrea sat alone with the empty bottle in front of her. She touched it gently and whispered, "He doesn't know yet, but the house has already chosen him." Jack woke early the next morning, still unsure if the night before had been a dream, but the soft bed, the sweet alien scent in the air, and the warmth of the room told him it was real. He stepped outside into the garden, where the air shimmered with floating pollen and soft glowing flowers, and there, standing silently near a silver fountain, was Kalatha, eldest daughter. She turned her head slowly, her eyes locking on his, strong, steady eyes like a soldier's. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. Jack nodded politely. Morning, Kala didn't reply, but she tilted her head slightly, studying him like a puzzle. She wore armor, not full battle gear, but light plates over her dress. It was both elegant and dangerous, just like her. She finally spoke. "You're not like the others." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Others?" She stepped closer. "Traitors, wanderers, liars. You didn't ask for wealth. You asked for shelter." Jack gave a small shrug. "I was hungry, tired, and out of options." Kala's lips curved slightly, maybe the smallest hint of a smile that was either foolish or brave, she said quietly. Then she walked past him, her shoulder brushing his just enough to feel the heat of her skin. Later that day, Jack wandered through the estate, unsure of the rules or what was expected of him. Velria was nowhere to be found, but Kala was always near, never too far, never too close. She watched him from the shadows, from the rooftops, from the training yard. He found a small practice area behind the garden. Alien weapons were laid out on racks. Curious, he picked up a staff with spinning blades on the ends. Before he could test it, Kala appeared beside him. "You'll hurt yourself," she said, taking it gently from his hands. "Then teach me," Jack said, half joking. Kala didn't laugh, but she nodded. "Fine." She moved with deadly grace, showing him the basic swings and stances. Jack tried to copy her, but his movements were slow and clumsy. Still, he didn't give up, and after a few tries, he managed a full rotation without falling. Kala lowered her staff and gave him a long look. "Most would quit after the first bruise," she said. Jack wiped sweat from his forehead. "I've been through worse." She stepped closer again, close enough for him to feel her breath. "There's strength in you," she whispered, "not just muscle." Before he could reply, she turned and walked away. But Jack noticed something. Her steps were lighter, her posture softer. She was opening up to him. That evening, Velria finally returned, carrying strange herbs and smoke dust. She prepared a fire in the middle of the great hall and called for her daughters. Kala arrived first, her eyes on Jack. Line followed, playful and barefoot, a wild grin on her lips. Neha came last, silent, her veil covering her face again. They all sat in a circle, with Jack across from Velria. She poured small cups of a glowing blue drink, not whiskey, but something stronger. "This is not for the body," she said. "This is for the soul." One by one, the daughters drank, and then she offered the last cup to Jack. He hesitated, but took it. As he drank, the room changed, the walls pulsed, gently, with energy, and suddenly he could feel their thoughts, not as words, but as emotions. Kala's emotions were sharp fire, honor, loyalty, and something else, hidden. Desire. She was the first to break the silence. "You gave our mother the spirit water. That means you've been accepted." Jack blinked, confused. Accepted into what? Kala's voice was steady. "Into the house." "Into our circle," Line chuckled. "She means you're being watched." Nyxia said nothing, but her eyes gleamed from behind the veil. Velria smiled softly. "They will test you in their ways." "Jack," he set the cup down, his voice calm. "Then I'll face it. Whatever it is." That night, as Jack returned to his room, he found a single object placed on his bed. It was a warrior's token, a small blade carved with the house symbol, Kala's symbol. It wasn't a gift, it was a message. She had marked him not as prey, but as hers. Jack sat down slowly, holding the blade. Things were moving quickly now, far beyond a simple trade. He had come to sell a bottle of whiskey. But something else was being exchanged. Here's something far more dangerous. And maybe far more valuable. In the darkness, Kala stood on the rooftop above his room, her hand resting on her sword. She watched him through the skylight, her face, but her heart beating fast. The first daughter had made her choice. Now the others would follow. The next morning. Jack heard laughter echoing through the trees outside the estate. Not soft laughter, but wild, untamed, the kind that stirred the wind. He followed the sound and found Line, the second daughter, balancing. On a narrow tree branch above the glowing river, she grinned when she saw him, her hair wild like flames, her clothes torn at the knees from climbing. "Come up here, human," she called down, waving a hand. Jack crossed his arms, looking up. "I'll break my neck." Line tilted her head and smiled wider. "Then don't fall." Jack sighed and began climbing the twisted roots and branches. Line didn't help. She only watched, amused. When he reached the branch, it swayed under his weight. But she didn't flinch. She stepped closer, walking like a dancer, and stood nose to nose with him. "You're braver than I thought," she said. Jack smirked. "I keep hearing that." She turned and leaped to the next branch, barely making a sound. "Follow me," she said, and took off, moving through the trees like she was born in them. Jack followed, slower, careful, but determined. They moved for nearly an hour, deeper into the glowing forest where the light turned blue and the air became thick. At last, they stopped at a small clearing where alien birds sang in strange rhythms. A nest of woven crystal rested in the center, full of glowing blue fruit. Line crouched beside the nest and whispered, "I come here when I want to be alone." Jack sat beside her, breathing heavily. "So why bring me?" She looked at him with serious eyes. "Because I want to know who you are." Without the others watching, she reached out and picked one of the glowing fruits. "It's dangerous to eat these unless you trust the one sitting with you," she said. Jack raised an eyebrow. "So what happens if I eat it?" Line smiled. "It opens your heart and shows your fear." She took a bite, chewed slowly, and then held the rest out to Jack. He hesitated, but something in her eyes told him this was a test. Not of strength, like Kala's, but of spirit. So he bit into it, his chest warmed. Then tightened. For a moment, he saw flashes of the pirate attack. Of being alone in space, of losing everything. He gasped and closed his eyes. Then it passed, and Line was holding his hand. "You carry pain," she whispered. "But you hide it behind jokes." Jack looked at her. "How do you know that?" She touched her forehead to his. "Because I do the same." She stood and walked toward the river, pulling off her boots and stepping into the water. Jack followed, the cold shocking his feet. Line reached into the stream and pulled out a silverfish with glowing scales. She held it up and smiled. "This is yours now. A sign that I accept you back at the estate." Valrea watched them return together. Walking close, soaked from the river, she said nothing but her smile was knowing. Kala watched from the window. Akea tight, and Nea sat in the corner, sketching something quietly with glowing ink. That night, second glass was placed before Jack at dinner. It was filled with a red drink that shimmered like fire. Valrea said, "The second bond begins." Jack drank a tan this time. Line placed her hand over his, holding it for longer than needed. When everyone left, Jack returned to his room. Tired, confused, but not afraid. A new object sat on his bed, a small silver bracelet, shaped like a leaf, Line's gift. She had marked him, not as a guest, but as a partner, 2 daughters now. And Jack still didn't understand how or why. He was being chosen, but a strange warmth had begun growing inside him. That night, Line climbed onto the roof and howled like a wolf. The house echoed with her laughter, and Kala heard it in the dark. Clenching her fist, the game had changed. In the quiet of the night, Nyxia stood in the hall. Staring at Jack's closed door, she didn't speak, didn't move. But the way her fingers curled around her sketchbook said enough. Her time was coming. Jack lay in bed, staring at the bracelet on his wrist. "I came to sell a bottle of whiskey," he whispered. "Now I'm being claimed by daughters of an alien queen." He didn't know whether to laugh or run, but something deep inside told him this was just the beginning. Days passed, and Jack began to understand the strange rhythm of the alien estate. Kala trained at dawn. Slicing through air with her blade, Line vanished into the forest after breakfast, barefoot and wild. And Nyxia, third daughter, remained in the shadows, always watching, always silent. She was the youngest, quietest, and most mysterious. Her veil never left her face, and her voice had never been heard by Jack. She floated like a ghost through the halls, leaving behind the soft scent of ink and starlight. The other two had spoken, had touched him, tested him, even claimed him, but Nyxia had done none of that. Still, Jack felt her presence more deeply than the others. One night, while walking past the music room, Jack heard a strange humming sound. Curious, he peeked in and saw Nyxia seated alone, a glowing canvas in front of her. Her fingers danced across it, creating images with ink that shimmered in the dark. She didn't stop when he entered, didn't even look at him. But the drawing on the canvas sent a chill through his spine. It was him, surrounded by the three daughters, each holding his hand. Nyxia had drawn this before it happened. Jack stepped forward, trying to speak, but something stopped him. He didn't want to break the quiet, so he sat across from her and waited. After a moment, Nyxia paused her drawing and pushed a small folded note toward him. He opened it slowly. One word was written in careful script: "Soon." Jack looked at her, but she had already picked up her pen again. The next day, Valria took Jack aside and led him into a private garden he had never seen before. The walls were tall, covered in ivy, and a single moonflower grew in the center. She gestured for him to sit. "She speaks little, but she sees much," Valria said softly. "Nay, doesn't use words, but she feels deeper than most." Jack looked around the silent garden, then back at the queen. What is she waiting for? Valria's gold eyes softened. She's waiting for trust, not from you, but from herself. She's different. Jack whispered. "She's special," Valria replied. That night, Jack found another gift on his bed. This time, it wasn't a weapon or jewelry. It was a drawing of the garden, the moonflower, and Jack standing beside it with Nyxia. Her way of saying she had been there too. The next morning, he awoke to the sound of rain, a rare event on this dry planet. As he stepped outside, he saw Nyxia standing barefoot in the garden, her veil soaked, arms wide, face turned toward the sky. She looked peaceful, powerful. Something pulled at him, and he walked toward her without a word. She reached out her hand. He took it. Her fingers were cold at first, but quickly warmed. She guided him without speaking, past the house, through the forest, to a crystal cave hidden behind a waterfall. Inside, glowing stones lined the walls, lighting the space with a soft purple glow. Nyxia led him to a small pool and knelt beside it. She removed her veil slowly, letting it fall to the ground. For the first time, Jack saw her face. She was beautiful, delicate features, glowing eyes, and a quiet strength in her expression. Then she looked at him, lips trembling slightly, and spoke her first words. "I was afraid you wouldn't stay." Jack blinked, stunned by her voice. It was soft, musical, but carried weight. "I didn't plan to," he admitted, "but I keep finding reasons not to leave." Nyxia smiled, small but real. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a small shell-shaped charm. She pressed it into his hand and whispered, "Now you're complete." They sat in the cave for hours, speaking little, but saying everything through glances and gestures. When they returned, the estate felt different. Kala raised her eyebrows. Line smirked knowingly. And Velria said nothing, but her smile reached her eyes. At dinner, a third cup was placed before Jack. It glowed silver. Unlike the first two, Velria said only one word. "Balance." Jack drank it. And Nyxia placed her hand on his, holding it gently. No need for loud words. No need for tests. That night, Jack found her final gift, a small wooden figure carved to look like the four of them standing under one roof. The meaning was clear. He belonged now, not just to Kala, not just to Line, but to Nyxia, too. All three had chosen him not by chance, but by tradition, by instinct, by heart, and far above the estate in the stars. Old watchers whispered quietly. The daughters of Ilria had done what few ever did. They had chosen one man together, and that man was not ready for what came next. Because love was only the beginning, the days felt longer now, but not in a bad way. Jack walked through the estate as if it were his own, no longer a guest, but something more. Kala trained near him, often in silence, her blade flashing. In the sunlight, Line left fresh fruits and strange flowers outside his door each morning. And Nyxia always appeared without warning, offering a quiet presence that brought him peace. But something had changed in the air. It wasn't tension, no. It was preparation. Velria had begun to speak with her daughters in whispers, often. Glancing at Jack when she thought he wasn't looking, one morning she summoned him. Not to the garden or the hall, but to the inner chamber, a place he hadn't seen before. It was circular, with high stone walls marked by carvings and old glowing symbols. A single seat stood in the center, shaped like a throne, but made of bone and glass. Velria pointed to it, her face calm. "Sit, human." Jack hesitated, then obeyed. Once seated, the three daughters entered from different paths, each dressed in ceremonial colors. Kala in crimson, Line in forest green, and Nyxia in moonlight silver. They stood around him, silent, their eyes serious. Velria stepped forward and raised her voice. "The house has accepted you. But before you are truly one of us, you must face the trial." Jack blinked, confused. What kind of trial? "Not a test of strength," Kala said, stepping closer, "but a test of truth, not a game of tricks." Line added, "But of heart." Nyxia didn't speak, but she placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and grounding. Velria nodded. "You must choose." A soft glow filled the room as the throne shifted under him. Suddenly, he wasn't in the chamber anymore. He stood in a wide, empty space, stars spinning above, and one by one, the daughters appeared before him, not in their bodies, but as visions made of light and memory. Each told a story. Kala spoke of the war she had once fought, how she had almost lost her life protecting her family. She showed him a memory, her bloodied and alone, yet refusing to fall. Line's story came next. She showed him her pain of being the middle child, always laughing, always hiding sadness. She revealed how she would sneak away just to scream into the trees. And then came Nyxia, her voice soft, her story quiet, but deeper than the others. She showed him her childhood of silence, of drawing her emotions because her mouth wouldn't speak. She showed him the moment she first saw him, soaked and tired, and felt a light grow inside her. The visions faded, and Jack found himself back on the throne. Breathless, Velria spoke again. "Now, you must choose which story touched you most." Kala's eyes were locked on his. Line's hands were behind her back, nervous. Nyxia didn't move, but her heart was there in her eyes. Jack stood slowly, looking at each one of them. "I can't choose one over the others," he said. "They each hold a part of me now. just like I hold a part of them. Velria's expression didn't change. Jack continued. Kala taught me strength through action. Line showed me the power of freedom and feeling. And Nyxia taught me that silence can hold more truth than words. I can't break that into one answer. For a moment, there was silence. Then Velria stepped forward and touched his forehead with her palm. A light spread from her hand across his skin. Glowing in soft waves, "You have spoken with a full heart," she said. "And so, you pass?" The throne melted into the floor. And the room opened up to the stars. The three daughters moved toward Jack, not with words, but with unity. Kala wrapped a cloth around his shoulder. Line placed a bead necklace over his head, and Nyxia pressed her forehead against his. Each gesture a bond, a vow. Velria spoke one final time. "By the trial of house and soul, you are now one with us. You are not a guest, not a visitor, not a traitor. You are ours." Jack didn't smile. His heart was too full. He looked at them, all three, and nodded. "I'll protect this house as if it were my own." That night, the stars over the estate burned brighter than usual. The trees hummed with low music, and even the wind felt different. Jack sat by the fire, the three daughters at his side. No need for more trials, no more testing. He had been chosen not once, not twice, but 3 times. And as he stared into the flames, he whispered to himself, all of this. From one bottle of whiskey, the estate was glowing with lights that night. Lanterns floated in the air, casting warm colors across the walls. Alien flowers bloomed in patterns that only opened once every few years. Even the wind carried music, soft and deep, as if the planet itself was humming. It was the night of unity. Not a wedding, not a feast, but something far older, a tradition that had no exact name in human words. But for Jack, it was the moment his life would change forever. He stood in front of a mirror, adjusting the deep blue robe that Velria had given him. It shimmered with threads of light that moved when he breathed. He looked different, now not just in clothes, but in his eyes, he wasn't just the tired man who had walked into the alien market with a bottle of whiskey. He had become someone they trusted, someone they wanted. A soft knock came at the door, and Kala entered first. She wore her ceremonial armor over a gown of blood-red silk. She didn't speak, she simply placed a warrior's pendant around Jack's neck, a sign that he had earned her loyalty. She stood beside him. Silent but proud, Line entered next, laughing as she danced into the room. She tossed a garland of glowing leaves over his shoulders. "You survived me," she teased. "That means you're stronger than most." But when she met his eyes, her laughter softened. She squeezed his hand, then stood beside Kala. Then Nyxia came, floating in like moonlight, her silver dress trailing behind her. She didn't wear her veil. For the first time, Jack saw her clearly, every step quiet, every movement full of grace. She handed him a ring made of bone and crystal. Then, without a word, she kissed his cheek and took her place beside her sisters. Velria entered last, holding a small glowing bowl in her hands. It contained fire not burning, but alive. She dipped her fingers into the flame and touched each of their foreheads. "To the one who brought the spirit water," she said, looking at Jack. "To the one who gave without asking. And to the 3 who chose not with words, but with soul." The music outside grew louder, and she led them all into the courtyard. Hundreds of guests had gathered, Dalian nobles, warriors, traders, even forest creatures that stood silently. At the edge, everyone came to witness the unity. In the center of the courtyard stood a large stone circle. Jack stepped into it with the daughters, each taking his hand. Velria raised her arms. "Tonight, we honor choice, bond, and balance," she said. 3 daughters, 1 bond. The guests began to chant in soft voices, creating a rhythm like waves. Kala placed her sword into the ground beside Jack. Line lit a flame beside it, and Nyxia dropped a small crystal into the fire. It flared bright, then settled into a soft glow. Valrea looked at Jack. Speak, Jack looked at the crowd. Then, at the three women beside him, he took a deep breath. I came here with nothing, he said. A bottle of whiskey was all I had left. But somehow, it became something more. It brought me into this house, into your lives, and now, I don't want to leave. I offer not wealth, not power, but myself completely. The moment he finished, the fire behind him rose high, lighting up the night sky. The crowd cheered in a quiet way, nodding, clapping slowly. Valrea stepped forward with 3 rings, one for each daughter. Jack took them gently and placed one on Kalase's finger. She bowed her head, one on Lynse's finger. She smiled wide and kissed his hand. And the last on Nyaxia's finger. She simply held his face and looked into his eyes. A soft breeze blew across the courtyard, and the fire dimmed to a soft gold. Unity had been sealed, not by law, but by tradition. Later that night, Jack sat with all 3 beside the river that ran through the garden. They sat close, no words needed, above them. The moons of the planet crossed paths, something rare and symbolic. Kala rested her head on his shoulder. Lyn leaned back and laughed at the stars. Nyxia held his hand and traced small circles on his palm. Jack closed his eyes for a moment. Everything felt right. Like it had always meant to happen this way. He had not just joined a house, he had joined a legacy. And it had all begun with a single choice, to trade a bottle of whiskey. Years passed. But the story never faded. People from across the stars spoke of the human trader who walked into an alien market with nothing but a bottle of whiskey, and somehow walked out with the hearts of 3 daughters. Some laughed and called it a tale. Others whispered it with respect, knowing it was real. Jack was no longer a visitor, no longer just a man from Earth. He had become something greater. Husband of 3, a leader in a house that once lived quietly at the edge of the galaxy. Now, their estate had grown, filled with life, color, and voices from every world. Alien guests came daily, not just to trade, but to seek advice, to learn peace, to witness unity. Kala had turned the outer lands into a training ground. She taught warriors from many species how to fight with honor, how to lead without fear. Her voice was firm, her blade still sharp. But when Jack walked by, she always smiled just a little, and when battles ended, her hand always found his. Lyn had made the gardens into a place of music and laughter. She raised animals with wild coats and taught children from nearby villages how to climb trees and sing to the stars. She laughed loudly, lived fully, and still left little surprises in Jack's coat pocket: berries, tiny charms, feathers from birds that only she could catch. Nyxia ran the library, which now stretched over 3 wings of the house. It held knowledge from dozens of planets, all hand-drawn and carefully organized. She still spoke very little, but she didn't need to. Every time Jack passed her door, she would place a small drawing under it, little moments of their life. Him fixing a roof tile, her watching the rain, Kala hugging a student, Lyn sleeping under a tree. And Jack had changed too. He was no longer just human. He didn't grow claws or speak telepathically, but the way he stood, the way others listened when he spoke, that was different now. He led the council of neighboring houses, even when some elders questioned how a human could understand their ways. But when they saw how the daughters stood beside him, equal, proud, loving, nay, understood, he wasn't just chosen, he had earned it. One day, a merchant ship from Earth arrived, its crew, wide-eyed and curious. They asked Jack if he missed his old world. He thought for a moment, then smiled. "I miss the chaos," he said, "but not the loneliness." The Earth captain asked how. It all began. Jack laughed and held up a bottle of whiskey from a shelf behind him. "This," he said, "one trade, one night, and my whole life changed. The captain stared in disbelief. "You mean all of this came from that?" Jack nodded. It was never about the bottle. It was about timing, trust, and the right people choosing to see beyond what they were told. Later that evening, Jack sat in the garden under the moonlight. Calla sat beside him, sharpening. A blade line was asleep nearby with 2 children on her lap, both from a visiting planet. Neha curled beside him, her head on his chest. Sketchbook on her knees, Jack looked at them, then at the sky. He had traveled far, lost much, and faced trials beyond his understanding, but here he had found something no map could lead to. Home Velrea, now older and quieter, stood in the doorway and watched them. Her smile was soft, her eyes wet. She had once taken in a man who looked like he had nothing. Now, that man was the heart of her family. Jack raised a glass to her, and she raised one back. No words were needed. And the stars above glowed brighter, as if they too celebrated what had been built. Not with war, not with power, but with connection. With a bottle, yes, but more importantly, with courage, kindness, and an open heart. And as Jack leaned back, surrounded by daughters of different stars, he whispered one last time, "I thought I was just trading whiskey, but they gave me the universe." This completes your 7-part HFY sci-fi story titled, "He Sold a Bottle of Whiskey to an Alien Stepmother. Now all 3 of her daughters call him husband." Let me know if you'd like the full story compiled into a document, a YouTube video description, or a Leonardo AI image prompt for the thumbnail. I'm ready whenever you are.